Hey everyone, and welcome back to another episode of Souls on Fire. Today I am joined by Jennifer Bjornson. I met Jennifer through the Lions Last Weekend, and she offers her services and she helps others through hypnotherapy or RTT, which is regressive talk therapy. I believe correct. I didn't like totally jack that up right out of the gate, but and she helped me quit smoking, something I have struggled with for 21 years, since I was very little. And I believe I've shared this story, maybe not, but when I was kicked out of my house, it's a habit I picked up, kind of as a rebel. Um, but anywho, I met Jennifer through the den. She helped me completely stop smoking. So it's comes to mind every now and then, but I have not touched a cigarette in over a week now, and I feel amazing. And I thought, gosh, I would love to have this person on so she can help others talk about how, this is a common theme of a lot of the people I talk with is that there are so many ways we have been told that we need to heal ourselves or prescribe treatments or things we should do to try and make ourselves better. And there's what we're finding is a lot of things coming out now that are really enabling people to radically shift their mindset, radically change their lives in very quick ways in what would otherwise, a long time ago take a very long time to do. Whereas now it was 2 hours in a chair with Jennifer, and now I listen to a recording for 20 minutes a night, and my life is completely different. So, Jennifer, thank you so much for being here.
Well,
And
thank you for having me. I'm really excited to talk about this because I've mentioned this before, but I love talking about this. I love helping people. And I'm just so excited about your journey and how much work and the effort that you put in to create a better life. So I'm really excited for this conversation.
likewise, likewise. And it's so crazy because it feels like I have put in so much effort to try and quit smoking before. So much effort, whether it was, trying patches, whether it was the gum. That about killed me because I didn't know you were supposed to bite it, and then like I was just chewing it. So I have like two pieces and constantly getting these hits of nicotine. Anyway, that was funny. People at work were like, "Bro, are you okay?" I'm like, yeah, what's wrong? I'm not supposed to chew that. But it actually feels like it was a lot less effort, right? So after I had this very, and I was skeptical about this, like, okay, I've heard of people going to hypnosis before and it not working and it kind of being the snake oil of a solution. So I was a little skeptical, but I still had that mindset of uh, I'm going to stop smoking on Thursday. Like after my appointment, that's going to be it, right? Like this has to work. It's going to work. After Thursday, I am done. But of course, I was very skeptical, and so yeah, I had that appointment, and it was not to say it's been super easy, but it's just been so much different, a different mindset, not having to worry about things, and just being able to take that energy that I was kind of squandering and focus it into chasing my dreams, chasing, becoming a better version of myself. So I asked a friend this: what do you do with 3 extra hours a day? It's just it's crazy when you think about that. So anywho, um, sorry, I'll like we were talking about this before. We both could just get going in our talking. So, what got you started down the road of hypnotherapy? Right, like what started you on that path?
So I think my story is very typical to a lot of people in this industry. I found myself where I was at a point in life. I genuinely hated life. I was insanely depressed. I always just felt like something was wrong with me. I was just everything was not going well. And I did have quite a bit of mental health diagnoses. So about 18, 19, they said, "Oh, you have depression." And I was like, "Oh, okay. Yay, I've got a name. I've got a name for what my problem is." And they're like, "And here's a little pill." And I was like, "Okay, life can begin." That was not the case. A few years later, things didn't get better. So I go back and they said, "Well, you actually have anxiety, which is causing your depression." And I thought, "Oh, okay. And now here's another pill. And I thought, great. Now we have it fixed. Life can begin. And then about 7, 8 years after that, things are still not going well. I go back and they said, well, actually, you have ADHD, anxiety, and depression. And I thought, well, great.
Now it all
Now,
makes sense.
right now we figured out. And I think there was a few others at some point. There was like, well, we think you're bipolar. And I thought, oh, great. They just kept finding acronyms and names and pills to just lop on top. Well, so for about, there was a 5 year period that I was done. Nothing was getting fixed. It just kept sinking lower and lower. And at that point, I was pretty much ready to check out. And even though I have an amazing husband, I've had what looked like a picture perfect life. I have 4 really beautiful, healthy kids. There really wasn't anything that I could pinpoint that was wrong. And when I would talk to people, they would ask, well, what do you think caused this? Like, what do you think happened? I'm like, I don't know. Like, maybe if I was beaten as a kid or if I had some really horrible traumatic experience, like at least then I could pinpoint it on that. But no, like my parents are still together. I mean, I think we're happy. I think we're doing okay as a family. And basically, I had hit absolute rock bottom. So I said to myself, I'm like, well, what? There's probably a 2 month period where I was just thinking, what am I going to do about this? What's the plan? Right? You can't keep doing this, but you can't check out because that would kill your family. That's a horrible thing for them. But I can't just stay alive just for them. But I can't, right? So I was going back and forth on this whole thing. And I can't, I don't really know how this came into my head, but I basically thought, you know what? I am going to do everything that I'm going to try everything that I can possibly try. Like, I don't care how weird it is. I don't care how stupid it is. I don't care how much money it is. I am going to either fix this or I'm not dealing with this anymore. And so I kind of had a list of things in my head of what I was going to try because it was kind of like all the weird stuff, that and like at this point I was thinking if I got to fly down and do an ayahuasca trip, like done, I'll do it. I don't care. And that was kind of like a real taboo, like people were not really talking about it, but I was like, I don't care. I don't care. I can't live this way anymore.
Mhm.
So I I really just went down the rabbit hole. I found things that just kind of helped a little bit, which gave me some hope. I I really just questioned everything. I mean, everything. I questioned everything in my life. And nothing was off the table to question. Like I questioned, do I want to stay in this life that I'm in? Because I'm really unhappy. Do I want to stay in this marriage that I'm in? And I love my husband, but clearly, like I'm so unhappy. Is this gonna work? And so I just really allowed myself to question everything and to question religion and atheism and I mean everything. I was just like, what is it that I want? What is it that I believe? What is it that I'm going to continue on in this life? Because what I was doing in the past, that's not working. And it really just brought me to this point where I was doing really well. I found energy healing. I was doing herbs, and I noticed quite a good difference. Like it was starting to be a good difference where I was having some hope, was feeling better. And then I found I was at a conference or something for my husband. It was his business conference, and they had a hypnotherapist there. And I did this quick little thing. I mean, it wasn't a funny thing. He really he was doing something to like calm down nerves, or I don't remember, but it was instantly I thought, I feel really good. Like what was that? And I really started deep diving, researching hypnotherapy. And I found specifically, it's called RTT Hypnotherapy. It's very specific, called Rapid Transformational Therapy Hypnotherapy.
I knew I messed that up.
No, it's it's fine. And I'm a person that I really feel led to things. I used to not trust my intuition, but I now very much trust my intuition on things. And I know when I'm being led to something. And I found this. I really didn't have a whole lot of information about it, but I thought, that's it. That right there, that's it. I started really diving in and learning it. I just joined, and it was kind of funny because I was the only person in the group where everybody else had an experience with it. They knew what was going on. And I said, I don't know what I'm doing here. I just know I need to be here. I know this is it. I know this is the thing. And everybody was like, how did you get here? And I'm like, I don't know, but I'm here. And my very first session, I had horrible anxiety, like I had said, and it just kept progressively getting worse. And in one session, I just had this huge weight lifted off of me that I had not had in 30 years. And I just thought, I knew it. And I just kept doing sessions. I kept learning. And it has just been completely life-changing for myself. And at that point, I wasn't really even looking to help other people. I mean, I probably should have been a bigger person, but I wasn't. I was just like, I want to not hate life. That's my goal. Right. And when I started feeling great, then I started noticing other people and family, and I just was saying, I can't sit back and have this great life and watch other people suffer. Like that's mean. So I turned it in. So now I am actively helping people who really want to overcome, who really want to switch their mindset. And that it's been amazing to learn. You learn the patterns of the brain. You learn how basically to work with your mind rather than constantly just feeling like you're pushing against something and that you have no control. I don't fear. There's very little I fear because I feel like I have so much more control. And I feel like no matter what comes up, I'll be able to handle it because of what I've learned.
There's a whole lot to unpack there. So first off, thank you. That was really cool, right? So like going to the diagnosis, I shared a very similar experience, I would say, with the Veterans Association after I got back from Iraq. There was a lot of diagnoses of, well, hey, you have PTSD and we're going to give you these pills, which, I tested probably 15 different SSRIs and, all of them gave me these like wild side effects. And so then I'd get some pills for, once I found the one that gave me the least side effects, then they gave me some pills to help me with the side effects. But then they also, discovered that I was bipolar. I had adult ADD or ADHD. I had anniversary trauma. I mean, just like the list of things went on and on and on. And it's interesting. I have a little pill tracker right now, and this is all vitamins and, like oils and things like that. I used to have two of these that were full of valproic acid, and I think at one point I was taking some kind of elephant tranquilizer. The guy told me it was because it was like I had to sleep at night from all this other crap. It was insane, right? And so you get to a point where you're like, dude, I can't keep doing this. I cannot live this way, and like life sucks. I'm ready. This is not worth living, right? And so you reach that point where it's like, okay, well, I have to do something. And so that try everything, because like you said, I mean, if you're willing to check out, well, why not do anything you can? And it doesn't matter if you check out, but like if it causes your death, it doesn't matter anymore, because that is now a possible outcome anyway. So, and then it's interesting, like That's cool. The your husband's business conference where, coincidentally, right, you run into someone who is now introduces you to that next part of your path. And something I wanted to touch on there, or at least highlight, was, um, it's interesting how the woo woo and the intuition, kind of this is uh, demonized or made to look like it's not real a lot in our society, movies. It's fantasized like it's not really a real thing. Now, the United States Marine Corps does not mess around with their weapons. They like to have very effective weapons. That's their thing, right? Is combat. So anyway, it was fascinating to me. I remember being in boot camp, and several times, drill instructors would repeat, "Always trust your gut. Always trust your gut. If your gut is telling you there's something wrong, there's something wrong." Okay, so that it's interesting that here's this military force that's like your gut should be listened to. So again, they take their weapons very seriously, so that should tell people something, that the United States Marine Corps believes this to be a real phenomenon. So anywho, the intuition, that's what we were talking about. Okay, so you learn this, you find this great tool, right? And that's okay, right? You're a little selfish. You're like, dude, I just want to stop hating life, because I feel very strongly. We can all look back, but it's like that was your path, and that had to happen for you to be where you're at now, where you're now helping others. So I'm curious, when you say, now you look around and you see other people suffer, do you ever find that, let's say you see someone and they're struggling with anxiety like you did, and you say, hey, I know something that can help you. Do you ever find those people that are like, I'm not interested in your bullshit?
Yeah. I would say one of the most frustrating, not infuriating, but the most frustrating things is to have somebody who is struggling, and not just having a hard time, but
Mm,
for years, for decades, um or somebody with PTSD who is just can't even live a normal life. And there's been quite a few times where I'll say, hey, have you ever looked into this? It really helped me. And I just find it so sad. I don't get mad, I don't get upset at them. I find it really sad when when somebody's struggling so hard, and their instant reaction is, well, no, like, oh no, I've talked to my doctor, or I'll have to talk to my doctor, or, and I get it. I
yeah,
mean, I'm empathetic to that, but it is really, really hard,
sure.
because you just want to,
Hold them down and
you
hypnotize
just,
them by force.
yeah, if that was the thing, maybe, yeah. Um, and I would have to say, I will say, one another thing that gets really hard is, when somebody says something like, well, that worked for you, but you don't understand. And knowing what I've been through, knowing, and just a little bit that I know about you, having these people around who have genuinely overcome, who have truly been through the lowest of lows, the depths of hell, and then for somebody to turn around and say, well, you didn't have it that bad, so of course it worked for you. And that's probably another hard statement,
Oh yeah.
because because you don't want to sit there and tell them your whole trauma story. You don't want to sit there and
Play
go,
who has worse trauma.
right,
Yeah.
right.
Yeah, no,
You're not
that's
trying to
totally
what.
fair. But I totally get that sometimes, where you're just like, you have no clue, like the demons that have been stomping my face in for years, that I had to get up and fight. And
Yeah.
yeah.
Or somebody will say, oh, it wasn't really that bad. And one of my things is, I desperately wanted to look normal,
Mhm.
that I I would do everything possible to make it look like that I was okay. I would have, I
Oh,
can't tell
right.
you the amount of like the depths that I would have gone to keep everything looking okay. Like it blows my mind. And this is not, I'm not ripping on anybody, but it really blows my mind when I see people who mention, oh, I have anxiety, oh, I have ADHD. There's no way I would have announced that before getting help, before coming, figuring this out and healing myself. There's no way I would have ever mentioned that. If anybody said anything, it's just really fascinating to me how people so freely talk about it, because I did absolutely everything to cover it up, to make it look like, no, we're great, we're so
Mhm.
oh my gosh, I'm so good. Life is so great right now. And I was good at it. So
Yeah, it's interesting. I wonder if that's I mean, I'm sure we could speculate on that a lot because I know a lot of people do something very similar, right? Where you know that their life may be falling apart or things are not good, right? Things are not good. And you're like, hey, would you like to talk? And it's like, oh no, I'm fine. You're not. And I'm sure you would agree that only hiding that is not beneficial at all. Right? Like when we sit there and we
mhm.
take our skeletons, we're like, well, fuck you, and we shove it into this jar. Like, well, you just go sit in the back of crevices of my mind. Like that guy's actually running the show now. Because if you do that, those skeletons, like they're heavy. They're very. I think you described like that, just that weight being pulled off of it, and I'm sure it was something, right? But there was something you found that had caused that had been shoved in the back recesses of your mind that made you super anxious, and it was like, okay, we've got to worry about things now, right? Um, and so it's interesting when you see people where it's like, oh no, I'm fine. Let me just keep up this facade. It's like, well, if you just stop though, and you stop building this wall and go figure out what the hell is causing all this damage, like all of this can stop. It can all stop. We don't even have to play this game. And so, like you said, though, it's interesting seeing other people like still trying to play that game. It's like, no,
Yeah.
please, I can help you. Oh, you don't know what you're talking about. No, yeah, I've played that game too. Like with a
You
few
know,
things. But
yeah, for me, one of the biggest things, I give a lot of credit to, her name is Carol Tuttle.
mhm,
She is the inventor or the founder of energy types. And I love personalities. I love all those like little tests that you do. But one of the things that I really love about hers is it's not a personality. She says your personality can kind of change with the type of people or the type of environment you're in. And that was me. I i could be a very outgoing person if I needed to be. I could be a very calm person if I needed to be. And
mhm,
so whenever I would take a personality test, I was all over the map. I was the red, I was yellow, I was HIJK, like I was everything. And it was interesting because then I would have other people telling me, oh, no, you're this. Oh, no, you're this. And it was so fascinating. The one thing that I love about hers is there's no test. You have to figure it out on your own. And it really is the way that you move, and you send information and you receive information. It is the way that your energy moves in this world. And when I figured that out, just for me personally, she keeps it very simple: 1, 2, 3, 4. You're a one, a two, a three, or four. And then you have a secondary 1, 2, 3, 4. And when I found out that I am a four, they are very logical, very analytical, and they don't deal like emotions are very, very low on their processing, on the way that they process things.
mhm,
And I don't really deal with things emotionally. I deal with things very logically, even spiritual matters, even religious matters. It makes sense to me. That's why I believe in it, because it makes sense. I think about it. that makes the most sense. Therefore, that's what I believe. And then you have others who are very feeling based. They feel a lot. They have a lot of emotion. There's nothing wrong. Neither one is right. Neither one is wrong. It's just the way that we move in this world. And what I learned is, for myself, I have a father who was not angry, but just very explosive in his actions. And I don't mean explosive as he blew up and was angry and we feared him. It was just, he was explosive in his manners. It was just very like intense, a lot. And then I had a mother who was very emotionally based, and she cried a lot and she felt things a lot. So I have a father who's very emotional. I have a mother who's very emotional in two very different ways. And then, as my energy type is not emotional, the best way for me to handle it is I just shoved everything down. I just shoved it. And so when anybody would say anything to me and they would say, Jen, are you okay? Yeah, I'm fine. Yeah, I'm fine. And it's
Mhm.
really interesting that I, even still to this day, I'm doing so great. I'm off all medication. I feel great. But even every now and again, I will be going through something and somebody will mention, how do you feel about that? And I'm like, oh, I'm fine. And I'm like, wait, whoa. Let me back up there for a minute. I'm gonna I'm
Open
gonna
that
need
box
to think
back
about
up,
this.
take that out, take that out.
Yeah, because it's just such a habit
Mhm.
to just push it down. And I don't it's nothing my parents did, because they are who they were,
Mhm.
and that's just the way I handled it. And what are you going to do when a kid says they're fine and they seem fine and everything about them seems fine? You, unless you're the type of energy, unless you're another type 4, you don't really see them not processing things. You think, oh, they're fine. So I don't know if that caused more questions or answered questions, but that was a huge clarification for me when I learned specifically about energy types and the way we move through the world.
Yeah, I want to touch on one thing. It is interesting when you talk about the way your parents raised you, and there's this point where you say, sorry, my cat's outside my window. There's a point where you say that it's neither good nor bad. You understand that's just how your parents were, right? And so that's one thing I wish people understood more of, is that, because that's another thing that I had to fight for a long time. Like my parents, they were super. My father is very smart. He's a very smart individual, but he got kind of wrapped up in this very culty religion. He no longer really has a family or good friends because of it. We were raised in kind of, there's all these things I could go on and like list and like, oh my gosh, there are all these bad things and oh my, so blah blah blah. And me and my brother, we talk about this a lot, and more over the years. Um, probably like really sunk in when I was probably 34, 35 years old. But I just started really appreciating all those things my father was, all the things he put us through, all the things we had to suffer through. Like, and I'm not trying to minimize anybody's, trauma or anything growing up. I'm not sitting here saying, oh, it wasn't that bad at all. The legit, some of that shit sucked, but it taught me so much about myself and about, okay, there's some lessons I can take, or that's not the dad I'm going to be. Like, I know how he made me feel as a son, and that is very much so what I credit me being such an amazing father to my children. My children will always know what unconditional love is. There's nothing they could do that would cause me to be like, oh, you have broken some sacred vow. Like, dude, write on the walls, color all over the walls if you want to. Have fun. I might talk to you about it, but this anyway. So it's interesting that that comment you made about like how your parents is, it does. We can sit there and hold on to it as like, oh, woe is me, that victim mentality, like we were talking a little bit earlier before we started recording. Or there's that other mentality of, okay, something's holding me back here. There's something I need to learn from this, or a lesson I need to take. And then once I figure that out, that's going to propel me forward. I'm going to weaponize whatever it was that I used to sit there and, play the, oh, well, it was me. Wait a minute, that's a tool. And I can use that tool to, go serve others or go, whatever your dream is. If your dream is, being, there's no judgment, right? Just use your past, learn from it, go attack your future, right? And so,
I think
okay.
there is something that just because I think this is a really important part. If you were raised religiously, I think I find a tendency with people who are raised in a religion of forgiveness, they easily want to jump to forgiveness. And there's a few different things that I find why, like, they don't want the wrath of their creator, or they just feel like, no, that's the right thing to do, we should forgive. And there's other things, right? They
Mhm.
have the realization of, I'm now a parent. I realize I barely know what I'm doing. My parents didn't know what they were doing. But the point is that we want to jump to forgiveness. And one of the things that I find really, really powerful is if you take that time to allow yourself to say what you went through, that wasn't okay. That's not okay.
Mhm.
It should have been better. They should have been better. The only thing with that is don't hold on to it. And
Right.
and I really advocate, don't hold on to the anger, right? Like, let's not make that now our personality of how mad we are. But but just jumping to forgiveness, I have never seen that work ever. And I know sometimes we want to jump to forgiveness, but taking that time to let out the anger, to let out the hurt, to let out the disappointment, then because it's in
Yeah.
there and it is affecting more things than we understand. It's affecting things. That's one thing that I'm so fascinated with is, let's say you are angry at your parents. And I find it so fascinating how many times I have found that I will work through something and I didn't even realize how it was affecting other areas of my life, how it was affecting, like, me being mad because I lived in a very emotionally chaos home, even though they weren't trying to be. That's just who they were. And I held on to anger and I held on to stress and I held on to anxiety, trying to make everybody happy, trying to be the perfect. What is it that I'm supposed to be? What's going to make my dad happy and not blow up? What's going to make my mom not cry? What are we doing here, right? And I caused myself so much stress. And when I finally released it, I noticed how much more relaxed I was towards my kids. I didn't even realize how much that stress and how much that anxiety and how much that stress was affecting other areas of my life, whether it was business. Like, I was taking that, like, what are my clients going to think? What are people going to think if I do it this way and not this way? And I let go of all that anger and all that hate and all that stress and that anxiety. And it was like, oh, now I can be who it is I want to be and who it is that I'm actually am, because I'm not holding on to that. And I think that's a really important thing, because sometimes we think we're just holding on to it and it's not that big of a deal. I guarantee you it is causing havoc in way more ways than you even understand and even know. And some of the things that we think are so little are the biggest cause. And it's just really amazing to me. And I really, really, like, that is one of the things I just so try to tell people, like, no, don't hold on to this, because I don't think you understand how many areas it's affecting.
So I'm gonna play. I'm not gonna play. I'm gonna ask some questions here for my own understanding, really, because I feel like we could go on about this for a long time, right? About how I totally agree. If someone simply jumps to forgiveness, let's say you walk up, you step on my foot, and it causes like, or I'm going to come up with a terrible analogy, but if I simply pass it off because I feel like I'm taking some self-righteous thing or whatever it may be, but there's some really truly hurt emotion there that I maybe didn't express. Like you actually really hurt my feelings when you said that. And I just ball, oh, it's okay, I understand, yada yada yada. Taking that very like just passing it off approach, you're right. That is very similar. All you're doing is putting it back in a jar and stuffing it away. That's actually not helpful, right? And so, there is when I talked about, I guess, kind of growing to understand how my parents, I guess, had affected me. That's interesting too, because um, it had been many years, just kind of learning to appreciate, I guess, the religious stuff because how that has helped me now in what I do and how I interact with people and being able to discuss religious items. Um, but there's other things that maybe I didn't even know, right? So, like the smoking, that was interesting because in our session, it had taken me back to several memories between my parents and I that had given me these very interesting ideas of what smoking was and why, I felt like I needed that and what I had associated it to. So that's interesting because, again, I'm sitting here like, well, no, I kind of made amends with my parents, yada, yada, yada. And now, almost 2 weeks ago, I'm sitting there finding these other things that, like I'd swept my floor, but holy shit, there was something stuffed under the bed. So to your point, it's interesting how there are things that we don't even realize are still there. So I guess in trying to ask my question, I just answered it. That's fascinating. That's fascinating. Do you find that a lot? Like people are just kind of surprised when you take them back. Like let's say you take them back in a session and they're like, oh gosh, I keep putting my shoes on backwards. You're like, okay, great. Let's count backwards from 10 and let's find out why you're doing that. Do you find that a lot where people are just like, wow, I
Yeah.
that's go
Yeah,
on.
it really is one of the it's why I love doing what I like. It's why I love doing what I do,
Mhm.
because you have this situation, you have this um well, I'll use myself as an example. Like I had migraines and I knew I was causing them. I knew it was an emotional thing, right? I knew it. And then as I do a session on myself, I go back and I as I sit there and I'm okay, we do things because it gets us something.
Mhm.
I don't care what it is. I don't care if it's a migraine. I don't care if it's smoking. I don't care if it's anxiety. I don't care if it's like having panic attacks or being afraid of flying. We do it or we allow it into our being because it gets us something. Now, for
Huh.
me, migraines, when I was little, when they started, like I said, there was a lot of chaos, there was a lot of emotion. And when I had a migraine, I got my own room, I got special pop, I got my own TV, and everybody left me alone. Right.
Right.
So,
Right.
for me, I got like this calm, peaceful, the lights are low. My mom walking in very quietly. How are you doing? My dad, who was kind of a gruff, like just cowboy, was like, are you okay, Jen? Yeah, I'm okay. Right. And
I
then,
should get migraines more often.
well, yeah, like you're in this chaos in your body and your mind's going, oh my gosh, what is happening? Oh, I know what to do. The last time you got sick, you got a nice quiet room, you got some Pepsi and some special drinks, and they made you a grilled cheese sandwich. Like, what kid wouldn't be like, this is great? So they went away for a little bit of time and then they came back. It was really fascinating. They went away for a really, really long time. And then about 5 years ago, when I knew I knew this, and I had worked on a lot of stuff. Well, my migraines started coming back, and I was like, man, that is really weird. I was so young when I got them. I had completely forgotten that I used to get them. And
Mhm.
I was like, I'm getting headaches. And it wasn't until my mom said, well, don't you remember you used to have migraines? And I thought, oh, yeah, right. So now I'm connecting well, there's something going on here, clearly.
Mhm.
Well, when they started coming back, my life was very chaotic. We had a death in the family. We were moving, we were renovating a house, starting to renovate our new house. Like it was insane the amount of stuff that we were doing. So, what did my bodies do? Oh, well, you remember when you were a kid? And on top of it, I have 4 kids who are constantly like, Mom, Mom, right? You want alone time? You want rest time? Well, don't you remember as a kid? You went into a nice,
Migraine.
quiet, dark room. And so I realized again, it was giving me that's what it was giving me. And so one of the things that I is just so fulfilling in every session I do is it can be hard to watch people go back through painful experiences because it really is painful for them,
Yeah.
but it's very exciting for me because I know that after 3 or 4 of these scenes, we're gonna get to it. And it
Right.
really is a very, very short amount of time that we're gonna go back, we're gonna revisit these things. And I get it, it's really hard, and there's crying and there's a lot of emotion. And I'm very empathetic to that. But it is really exciting when you see that person and you say, you realize now that you are trying to get the love of your parents and you don't even want the love of your parents. You don't even need like, you don't need this. And they have that light bulb moment where they're just like, I am a 30, 40, 20, 50, 70-year-old person, and I have been doing this so I can get mommy and daddy to tell me I'm a good little girl or a good little boy. And I'm not minimizing it. I'm saying like they have that realization in their own head going, this is ridiculous. I am not
Oh yeah.
doing this any longer. I don't need your approval. I don't want your approval. If you happen to come back and we can work it out, fine, but I'm not dealing with this. I'm not holding on to this anymore. And that is like, that right there is the best part when they just, you see them and you'll say, can we get rid of this? Oh yeah. Oh yeah, get rid of it. Like this is done. We're done. And you do. And the person that they come out the other side, it's a lot. It's a lot to process.
Mhm.
But then usually when you talk to them, maybe a day later, they're just like, that weight is lifted. They're a totally different person. And I love that part. Uh, yeah, it's the best. It's the best to have to watch that realization.
It was interesting. So sharing a bit of my session was where it was fascinating that you had taken me back to a memory of, I was very young, very, very young, because this house we lived in where I had gotten that memory, we had moved out of by the time, I was 7 or 8. And I don't even know how young I was. It felt like I was, 3. Anywho, um, I remember sitting on the bed just seeing my mom like go through these old pictures. And there was this one picture of her and my dad, smoking in this area they weren't supposed to be. They were very rebellious. They had snuck onto this property to take this picture, uh, and it was interesting, like just how vivid everything was, right? So, like, obviously, our brain records everything, so all that information is still there. It's interesting to access data from such a long time ago, and then just kind of recall it, like, holy shit. Um, but moving forward, there was that question you posed. You said, gosh, pretend your mom and dad like showed up at your door and then they want to like start playing with your kids and then they want to help out in your house and then they're like, did we want to be a part of your life? And then they want to drive you to work and then they want to do your grocery shopping. At what point are you going to kick them out of the house? Like, dude, you can't be here. You know what I mean? Like now you're just interrupting my life. And for me, that realization, like, well, I likely probably would not let them in the door, right? Like if they just showed up one day, like, hey, we're back. Sorry, we haven't talked to you in 20 years, but now we want to be friends. I've done it 20 years without you, So it's like you said, it is so just an aha moment of it's fascinating the little habits or the little subtle nuances in our psyche that drove us to behaviors for reasons we don't fully understand. And we think we know why we did it. Well, gosh, I like a cigarette. It calms me down. I get to go out and I get a break from everyone and I can just take in this poison and it makes me feel good. That can't be true. That cannot be true, right? And you know this isn't. No, I hate smoking. I hate the smell of smoking. I hate purchasing cigarettes. I hate carrying cigarettes. I hate fucking looking for a lighter, making sure I've got a multiple lighters. You know, it's just the whole thing is ridiculous. But I did it and I rationalized why I did it. And then I believed my own rationalizations as to why I was doing it. Oh yeah, of course I smoke. This is why. It makes sense. How do you not understand that? But then, going back now seeing like, well, this is actually why you do it. It's like, oh wow, yeah, that's retarded. I don't want to do that at all, ever. I don't ever want to do that again. That does not interest me. I've got other things that I would love to be doing that are not that now. So it like you said, that is just like a bling, like that's a true light bulb moment for that's gotta be awesome. Just seeing people have that and like, oh my God. And like you said though, there's that it's very intense. It's very emotionally intense. And even in my session, you were trying to coax emotions out of me, and I didn't want to. Like there was a point where you're like, dude, you need to kind of berate your parents a little, like get that feeling off your chest of how you felt. And it's like I didn't want to engage in that because that hurt. Like that was hard for me to do. So um,
Yeah, and it
that
wasn't so much like let's cause hate and discontent, right?
but
Like
process that
there's
out.
yeah, it is fine. Like I I think I told you like, look, if you don't have any anger or hurt or frustration or anything towards your parents, like we'll move on.
Hmm.
But if there's anything in there, like we got to get that out. Like
Yes,
we're not keeping it's been in there long enough. Let's get it out. And so it's not so much that you have to sit there and berate your parents. I mean, I've had plenty of sessions where I said, do you want to say anything? No, I'm over it. I'm not like they can't hurt me anymore. And fine, no problem, right? No
sure.
problem whatsoever. But it goes back to that. If you're holding on to it, and we do things, we always do things because it's going to bring us something. And so holding on to that, like you said, you didn't want to feel that uncomfortable. Nobody wants to think of their parents that way. You want to remember them
Hmm.
in a loving way, but it's in there. And
Right.
it really goes right along with there's three reasons why why we do things, and it's to punish us, to protect us, or it gets us a need. And so for me, the migraines got me a need of consistency and peace. And I was working with somebody else, they had back pain. And we, during the session, figured out that back pain of theirs, they had actually a lot of pain. They had a lot of sports injuries, and that pain, their shoulder, their back, their hip, all this stuff, man, they got to talk about it a lot. They got a lot of significance because they were the
Uh,
person that overcame, and everybody was like, no matter what, this guy's in the gym, and I have no excuse because his back hurts, his shoulder hurts, his hip hurts, he's got this replaced and that replaced, and it that gave him a lot of significance because he didn't feel enough. He went through his life really struggling. He didn't matter in his family. He didn't matter to anybody else. But man, when he walked in that gym, everybody knew him because he was the one that overcame. And he's back in the gym after a little bit of surgery. You know what I mean? Like that's a great feeling, and it's
sure.
worth it to hold on to that pain because look what that person's getting from it. That amount of significance. And so so now is what I try to do for myself is anytime there's anything, I try and look at it like, what is this giving me? What is it giving me? And then once I figure out what it's giving me, okay, what's a healthier version of it, right? I don't like, oh, you've been giving yourself migraines to get calm and peace. How about you take a break? How about you go and shut
Go
the
on
door?
vacation.
Yeah, go on a vacation. How about you go on a vacation and you go enjoy life rather than causing yourself pain just to get a day off? Yeah. And we laugh about it, and it's totally ridiculous. But we do that on so many things. Sean in the Lion's Den calls it the stories. I say it's lies. I mean, we lie to ourselves all day long about this stuff because we're like, no, it has to be this way. And then when you break it down, you're like, no, it doesn't. That's ridiculous. And
Yep.
I'm the one that's doing it.
Yeah, that is fast. Kind of like what you're I was gonna say you have like a little barometer there of when you know things are getting a little bit too stressful or like you need a vacation or to unwind. It's a hey,
Um,
it's come back. It's like, all right, I didn't know I need to take a break now.
yeah, I'm very much a I'm very much a systems person.
Mhm.
So I put it in my life now. I very much have put it in my life that um I really like the idea of Sunday, a day of rest or a family day. That is very much like I don't do anything on social media. I don't do any business. It's very much all about I keep it very intentional and intentional on like where am I headed as a person, who do I want to be, and then I also really keep it family oriented. We really try to turn off TV and have a lot of family and game time and experiences together.
Mhm.
And like I this may sound really ridiculous, but I used to really shame myself for naps. Like I was like, I know I got 4 kids and I know I just was into labor, but I don't need a nap. I'm fine. Just keep moving forward. And and now I'm going, I'm gonna take a nap. And it and maybe that is not hard for anybody else, but that really is kind of a big deal for me to take a nap because that is just not who I was. And there was a lot of guilt and a lot of shame and a lot of about slowing down
Mhm.
and just resting. So, yeah, I'm very intentional about it now and I make it a part of my life and I make it a part of who I am rather than like, oh, I'm getting stressed. It's like, no, I'm a person that can handle stress and I'm a person who relax.
So okay, I like that, right? I what you just did there, and maybe I'm gonna highlight this for anyone listening because we were talking about this a little bit before we started recording, and that's taking the Lord's name in vain. Again, I'm a very spiritual guy, so when you ask him what is the Lord's name, we go back to the Moses and the burning bush, where he says, "I am that I am," right? And so, a lot of this belief around what we say about ourselves is eventually going to come true, right? Bruce Lee said that. Don't ever talk bad about yourself, even if it's a joke, right? Your words have power. In the beginning, there was a word. So shifting that from I am stressed to I'm a person and I have some stress and I'm dealing with it, like that creates something very different in the mind, right? If you say, gosh, uh I am so stressed. If you think about that, that's a condition of, things are bad and you just exist in this kind of sparky thing. And so your mind gets busy and that's what it goes to work on. Like, all right, shit, that's what you want. This is what you're gonna get, right? This is what you're telling the universe you want. Whereas it's life happens like it does with absolutely there's not a single person on this is one of the most fascinating things for me in being in these groups and being connected now with people who, from the outside, a lot of people are like, oh my gosh, they are so wildly successful and they have zero problems. It's like everybody is a person, period. That's it. Everyone's a human. Whatever you think you're feeling, I promise you they're feeling it too, right? So anywho, um, but there's a different mindset, right? It's not, oh, woe is me and I am these things and life sucks, then you die. It's, oh, wow, that sucks. Let's get around it. I know I'm moving beyond this. I'm still going over there. Boom, oh shit, a speed bump. That was a horrible speed bump, but I'm still going that way, right? It's just a different mindset as opposed to don't focus on the speed bump, focus again back on your future because the speed bumps are coming. But if you sit there and look at them, like you have to slow down as even if you're walking past it, you gotta slow down to sit there and investigate this thing and spend so much time looking at it. Look at that speed bump. That sure is a bad speed bump. That thing sucks so bad. Like, what do you do? Why are you sitting there looking at the speed bump? Keep going, right? But that's what we do in life, and that's where we get caught up, and we don't even know it. We run into some calamity in life, and then we just sit down with the speed bump. Like, why are you? And like you
Yeah.
said, you see other people, and you're like, hey, you don't have to do that. You don't even have to talk to the speed bump. Like, just like step over it. You don't understand. You're right. You may have a very different perspective of that speed bump. I don't understand that particular one, but I do know you can step right over it, right? And so, sorry, I'm kind of rambling here, but there's
No.
so much good like advice that I wish, like you said, it's fun to see other people run with this and then just radically improve their lives and like blossom, like take off. Just see them like, all right, well, there they go, you know.
Yeah. Well, and one of the things that I really just kind of adding on to the whole speed bump idea, but one thing I've really adopted, and this took me a while, but now it's very second nature, is anytime I feel stressed, upset, mad, bad about myself in any way, shape, or form, like anytime I feel an emotion, I don't want to feel anymore. I ask myself, what is my part in this? So
Hmm.
if I always say, what is my part in this? And if I'm feeling very stressed about, let's say, the house, right? Like I'm probably gonna walk out and there's gonna be some dirty dishes and there's gonna be things happening. Normally, or in the past, historically, I would have flipped my lid going, why didn't you guys do your chores? Why didn't, like, I asked you to? And now, and then I finally said, okay, what is my part in this? My part in this is, what does that mean that those chores didn't get done? Right? Like, what does that mean? They don't respect me as a mom. I'm now I'm now responsible for doing it, which isn't true. They're still responsible. I just now happen to be in the room. But we have all of these belief systems and we have this stuff that we lose it, or we get mad, we get frustrated, we have all these emotions surrounding it.
Oh yeah.
But if you step back and go, what is my part? What am I expecting? Because when you can figure that out, then I can sit there and I can say, okay, it is a little stressful to walk out and see a bunch of dirty dishes and stuff that I don't appreciate seeing. So, how about this? Because I'm not really enjoying it. But my part is, I just asked them to do it. I didn't give them a time limit. I didn't say, can you get it done before I walk out, before I'm done with my work, right? I just said, hey, can
Mm.
you get that done? And they said, absolutely. So now my part is to go back and say, could you please get this done now so that I can get lunch, or so that I XYZ. Another thing is, why does it have to be done right now? Because I'm irritated,
Right.
because I have an expectation that the house needs to look like a certain way. Do you get what I'm saying? There's so many
Oh,
things that we could
absolutely.
unpack here, and there's so many different answers to it, right? Maybe I feel like I'm not getting any help in the house. Maybe I feel like I'm not respected. Maybe I'm genuinely trying to get something done and the dishes are in the way. There's Every situation is so different, but every situation, if you say to yourself, what is my part in this? Now gives you control to fix it.
Mm.
Because if I just want a clean house, well, I have 4 kids. We have a lot going on. I homeschool. We have like a farm that's happening. Chickens get in the house. Like, it is a lot. So my expectation of what I want a perfect house to look like, that's not really anybody else's responsibility. That's my responsibility.
Mhm.
Right? I mean, there's a certain level that everybody has. And maybe I'm going really, really just beating a dead horse here, but when I really took on that phrase, what's my part, it changed everything. because anytime I get upset, I go, what is my part in this? And every single time, and I mean every single time, it has come back on, I had an expectation that I either one, did not communicate well, or two, my expectation is very unrealistic and I'm just putting that on everybody else. But it's making me unhappy. And then I'm trying to like tell everybody else that I'm unhappy.
Well, because of something you made up in your head,
Right.
right?
Right.
It's funny that there's I don't know if you know of him, a comedian named Brian Regan. He's very funny, and he did this skit that I very much so agree with. Because I had those parents that, everything had to be super clean and in its place. And like, the books had to be like all lined up on the shelf, and the movies were color coordinated when you put them back and you had to rewind it. And like everything was perfect. And so, growing up, when I first had children, I was kind of that very strict, chore, like these things will be done and your socks will be fucking folded. Ridiculous. But he did this skit where he said, it was something about, people freak out about kids playing. And so your kid starts writing on the walls, and all my kids have written on the walls. And he said something to the effect of like, would you just forget your happiness for a second and consider my walls or my paint? And when you think about that, it's like, here's your child. You're like, hey, welcome to Earth. I'm going to teach you how to be a human. We're going to have some fucking fun. I'm going to show you all the cool things you can do with your imagination. You can be anything you want. And then they're like, oh, color. They go right outside, hey, and then you destroy them for it, right? It's
Yeah.
very weird. And it's like, oh, like you said, well, what does it matter if somebody writes on the wall? Okay, let's play this through for a second. Let's say they make a circle of black marker. What's the worst that's now going to come of that? Is someone going to come over to your house, take a picture, and be like, dude, this is making the front page of the newspaper. I'm putting this shit on YouTube. Who cares? Like what is the absolute worst that could happen? And I don't know, it's interesting for me because I know this came from, in my upbringing. It was interesting how the religion, that specific religion, there was this judgment on how well you presented, right? So, you know, everyone had to be at church in the family, and we've all got our ties and our dresses, and we're all pretty and our hair's done, and everyone talks, all very kindly about how we helped the homeless person, and then we did this and we handed out that, and it was like a fashion show, to where there was a fashion show of morals, and there was a fashion show of who brushed their hair the best, and it didn't actually have anything to do with your moral uprightness, or whether or not you were feeding the homeless. None of that shit mattered, because we would go to Del Taco afterward every Sunday, and they'd talk shit on the homeless people that were sitting outside Del Taco, and it's like, I thought we were supposed to be feeding them. Oh, they're gross. Didn't we just have a conversation about how Jesus said, like, if you don't feed my brothers, you did not there in turn feed me?
One of these things just aren't like the other and don't belong. Yeah.
How is that guy not the very same thing you were just on a stage talking about? Like, it was, anyway, it was fascinating, but
Yeah.
it was kind of this system of like, as long as things looked good, and kind of to your point, I think that was very much so. Like, that's been beaten into our society in many of these, little demographics in cultural areas, right? America's a lot of smaller subsets, cultures, peoples. Um, but you see that a lot, where it's like, you have to just look good. Doesn't matter if your life's fucked up. Just keep the. Oh man, I was just talking to somebody else about this. That uh, uh, smile, pray, and obey, or something like that. But that attitude of, it doesn't matter what's going on behind the scenes. Make sure you present well, and we're all living God's best life as His children by filling out this checkbox. And it's like, man, all of that is just so opposite of A, life. B, I think, and again, I could be wrong because I don't fucking know, but I think what Jesus was trying to tell us, and, just it's fascinating though how we've and everyone knows it. Like we all know, like, oh yeah, let your kids play, and oh wait, stop, 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 stop. Why do I do that?
Yeah.
Right?
I I have truly found so much peace when I really took on the idea of personal revelation. Like with prayer, just really being open to my intuition. And now I'm obviously not perfect at it, like
For
nobody's
sure.
perfect at it, but at the same time, I have come to a point in my life where I really I'm trying to get better at it, but at the same time, I'm better than I've ever been, where I don't care who you are, I don't care what title you hold, I don't care what level of what church or and I am a religious person and I'm religious, I'm spiritual, whatever you want to call it. Like we go to church and I have the utmost respect for the leadership and for people trying to do their best. I have no problem with that. But when it comes to myself, my family, and what I think is the best for us,
Mhm.
I get the last say. Me and my husband get the last
100%.
say. And that was not always the case. And I now truly, I love the idea of personal revelation because I really do appreciate I do appreciate like having a community to go to that is going to support my belief system. I do appreciate that, but I also am very aware that they are human.
Mhm.
They are not perfect. They are doing the best they can, like I am. And just because they feel a certain way does not mean that that is going to be the way that we need to do it or want to do it. And there's a great freedom. There was a great freedom for myself to to have to give myself permission and my family permission to say thank you for that thought. We will be doing something else. But I appreciate that.
Yeah.
That's a thought. That's a great thought for you.
Yeah, well, and there's
Yeah.
power in that. Like, I don't know what your political views are, but I can promise you I disagree with them, right? And so, but you and I can still be friends. You can tell me some things about political concepts I don't understand. I'm going to throw shit at them, and we will disagree, right? But at the end of the day, you're going to go do your thing. I'm going to go do my thing. There's still value in like this community. What you're talking about, like, I know there's such an allure to be a part of church because it's spiritual. We are communal beings, right? We require community. That's what humans are. We are a community animal. And so, absolutely, if you find community in your faith with something greater than you, there's so much value in that. But like you said, there's also so much power in knowing that every single one of us has a personal relationship with God. You have a
Yeah.
different relationship with God than your husband does, and he has a different one than your kids do, and then they have a different one than the pastor does, and they have a different one than his wife does. Like everyone has got their own very personal thing.
And
And
what a
so,
great thing that brings to this world,
yes,
right? Like
yes,
I have learned so much from people that I know we don't agree, and
mm-hmm,
they'll say something because they're so knowledgeable in an area. And I think that is such a great way to look at it. Like that's amazing. You and I were talking earlier that I'm not really a great scriptorian person. Like I'm religious. I read the scriptures, but I'm not great at it. But
mm-hmm.
I so appreciate somebody who, like podcasts and people who can just devour the scriptures and genuinely understand it. Now, maybe that's their own interpretation, but I appreciate it because I don't get a whole lot from it. So I think I didn't mean to interrupt you, but that I
No, that's okay.
just no, I love people's different points of views because it benefits me so much because
Absolutely.
there's so much I'm not good at, but other people are. And I'm like, great, great. I can learn from you rather than me having to go learn an entirely new skill that I'm not even that great at.
Yeah, so it's to your point of people saying things like we will have differing opinions and they're still being valued, right? That is so very true. And it's such a shame that so many people are, instead of, coming to the table to discuss things, we see, and this is mostly being exaggerated in media for the purpose of dividing people, but how people don't have discussions anymore. It's kind of like, I say, uh, gosh, I don't like white shirts with black spots on them. And instead of being like, well, actually, this is like one of my favorite shirts, you're just like, what? Like, I can't talk to people like you. And then you jump out of the meeting, right? So there's not really any value in that, right? And so, had you listened to whatever story I was going to tell about why I didn't like that, you may have been like, oh, wow, that guy's like totally batshit crazy. But right, there would have been some value in the conversation as opposed to now you left in a disgruntled way or you're not happy with how that conversation, you let yourself become upset and then ran from a conversation, right? And so, sorry, that was a long way to get to this point. Is I don't like, um, I'm not a big fan of churches, right? So obviously, because of my upbringing with the church I was raised in, I find spirituality anywhere and everywhere. But I know a lot of people go to church, and I've got a lot of friends that, like, the other day, Mormon kids came walking down my street and like, hey, and it was awesome. There was like a thunderstorm rolling in, so I was just like outside appreciating Mother Nature, and so they walked in like, hey, you want to talk about God? I'm like, buddy, I would love to talk about God. I don't think we're going to agree on much, but if you'd like to talk, absolutely, right? And so I don't remember what we were saying, but this kid was, he was testifying his faith in a way that I don't agree with their God. Like I don't believe that their God is true, and likewise they don't believe that my God is true, so to speak. But the way this kid was talking about his faith, it made me appreciate more so now my faith. And I didn't have to sit there and be like, well, you're like, there was neither one of us was like, well, you're wrong or we're right, or it wasn't about that. It was like, oh yeah, absolutely. I believe everyone could benefit from Jesus Christ's message. Oh, so do you believe in this? I don't really believe in that, but I feel like you and I share all of our beliefs. We've just got some different translations, so to speak, on some of the details. Oh, sweet. So do your neighbors know? I don't really talk about it much, but I think everyone could benefit from that message. Oh, hey, well, man, it was really good talking to you. Likewise, buddy. Enjoy the show that nature's about to give us. So we don't agree at all on our faith, but there was no point where it's like you are now my enemy because you're different, right? And I think that's what that is. Well, I'm sorry, I got kind of lost on a tangent, but there needs to be more of that where people are able to just recognize these differences and not be like, okay, well, now I'm ending the meeting because you said something about white shirts with black spots on
Yeah, no, you're absolutely right. And the one thing that I find really fascinating, so I'm on social media, like posting content on social media, and every single negative comment, and I would say this about in the world as well, it really has nothing to do with me. If,
it.
if it has nothing to do with me, they could sit there and say, I hate your face. It has nothing to do with me. It has everything to do with the way that they're feeling. And so I find it really interesting if you sat there and said, I hate white shirts with black spots. That really doesn't have anything to do with me. It's your emotions, it's the way you're feeling. And I think there's a lot of times where in both ways, I think the person being attacked, if we could just realize that really the attack isn't even about you, it's really
Right.
not, it's their perception of you, it's their all of their experiences cumulative, like coming together, and you happen to be standing there and reminding them of an experience as to why they don't like something, and you just happen to be the symbol as to what they don't like, but it's nothing to do with you.
To be akin to me holding this in front and being like, why are you so blue? Right? Where I'm
Exactly.
looking through something, you're like, bro, there's something clouding your vision. And I'm just like, no, I don't listen to blue people.
Yeah. And then on the opposite, here's the interesting thing, on the opposite side, if I were to say to you, why do you have purple hair? That is the most ridiculous purple hair I have ever seen in my. Why do you have purple hair? There's only you. You don't have purple hair, right?
You
So
know,
you wouldn't be offended by that. You would look at me and go, we're just going to move
I
past
think your
that.
camera's messed up.
Right. You're like, clearly that is my own perception. At the same time, there's so many times where somebody says something to us and then we get offended by it. The only way you can get offended by it is if you believe it. That's the only way you can get offended by it. Because if I were to say to somebody, you have purple hair, and it's not true, and you know it's not true, and everybody around you knows it's not true, you wouldn't get offended. But if somebody were to come to me and say, you are the worst mother, and that was really like that was really an insecurity of mine, I'd be like, oh, why? Because I think it's true, because I think there's a possibility it might be true. So there's 2 points to that where I don't care what people say to me. It either doesn't have anything to do with me. And if I think it has something to do with me, then that's a belief I have. And it really isn't them. It's me thinking that anyway. I know that kind of went around, but I hope that makes sense.
I was tracking. I was tracking. That was
Okay.
that's very interesting though, because you're very right, right? Like, so to your point, if you say, well, gosh, your purple hair is stupid, it's so obviously not true. There's I'm worried about that. Or you could sit there and sling insults at me, and it's really based on my level of self comfort or self awareness or self love, that none of those are going to bother me. But there may be at some point, that's why they say 8-year-olds are like they're amazing at insults, because they see kind of, they just get at people at the root of them. You know what I mean? Like they'll attack you for your weight, or the way your hair's like combed over on the side, or the way, like they'll hit you where it hurts, because they call it right out. Um, but it's very true. Like, if those things didn't bother you, if you didn't find merit in anything they were saying, it's like, oh well, sorry, you're having a bad day. I'm gonna go this way now, right?
Yeah.
So that's interesting, right? All those negative comments, they don't, kind of going back to that 4 agreements, where you take nothing personal. Because again, if I come at you and I'm like, oh, here we go with the stupid white shirts with black spots, like, well, okay, one, that's ridiculous to be upset the fact that I'm wearing a shirt with black spots on it, but there's something clearly wrong with that person, that they would allow their emotions to get upset over something I'm doing. Like, that's,
Yeah.
and obviously it's a little different if you're in close relationships, but even then I find that that is still true. It's like, you don't, not you personally, but everyone really, I would come home and it's like, I knew this was a product of my behavior for many years. I knew I would come home and I would start fights with my wife, and I knew that I was starting fights because I was upset at something that happened at work, right? Now I would come home though, and I would believe the reason I was starting these fights. Oh man, this isn't ready. The that's not clean, or the kid's not taken care of, or there was a perfectly valid reason in my head why I was okay to be angry, but it wasn't true. Like, it wasn't. It was sure as shit convincing, but it wasn't true. It was me. It was me having an inability to deal with whatever stressors, or be okay with where I was with whatever I was doing at the time. That I then came home and said, well, I don't want to feel like this. So maybe if I knock you down, then I'll feel better about how low I feel.
Yeah. You know, something interesting, and going back to the energy types.
Mm-hmm.
So one of those energy types, it's actually just the number 3, and it is, they really like, I have a lot of type 3s in my life, and it used to be a conflict, but there was, because they like a reaction, like that reaction. I'm not saying what type you are. I'm just saying.
I mean, based on that, that's,
And
very
so,
poignant on purpose.
yeah, well, it was really great to recognize that. And because um either one, I could, for these type threes, because I knew about it, either one, I could give them that reaction with having no emotion attached to it, right?
Mhm.
Like I'll do this all the time. I have a type 3 son, and I can kind of tell when his energy is really getting pent up. That's typically when they start causing these big reactions. And so when his energy is getting pent up, I'll either start like fighting with him, like tackling him, because he's just got to get all this energy out. And the way he's getting it out is by like causing little disruptions all over the place. Or I'll tell him, have you worked out today? And he'll be like, no. And he knows this about himself. He understands that he's a type 3. And but the great thing is by really understanding your energy type and the way that you are, number one, it helps with myself, and it helps like you understand yourself. But the biggest thing it has helped with people around me, my husband, my kids, and just even people out in general. Like I'll be dealing with somebody, and maybe it's another type 4, and type 4s, we love it a certain way. We have this level of perfection. It's got to look just right. Nothing is off, and man, we are right. And we know we are right. And I'll meet another type 4, and they just want it a certain way, and I'll go, well, that's right for you. And but it gets it across to them. Just because that's right for you doesn't mean it's right for anybody else. And so it's this great tool. Just like understanding mindset, just like understanding all these tools that we have, going to marriage counseling. This is one I tell everybody to start with. If they're really struggling with like who they are or why they're doing things, what I say, start with this one, because this will tell you your rules, and your rules it's part of your rules. They dictate who you are, why you're doing things, what's going to make you happy, how you move in this world. So I love it.
Sorry, taking notes. And we have I, I thought that would happen. We went a little bit over on time. Well, so I want to set up another appointment with you, but so let's say I'm someone, I'm listening on the call, and I will have to I'll tag your basic to bold on Instagram. Is that, let's say I want to reach out and I want to get help, whether it's, I want to deal with my anxiety, I want to stop smoking. Is that the best way to get a hold of you if I want to reach out and make an appointment with you?
I am on every social media as basic to bold. And so I find that just messaging me works. I also have a website, basic to bold, that if you want to go look it up there. But I try to keep it really simple across all platforms. Oh, basictobold.com is the website, but then on every platform it's just basic to bold.
All right. Well, I will certainly link that for viewers. Like I said, um, I'm genuinely grateful. I've struggled with smoking for a long, long time. And I've been able to quit a few times, but it's always been, with the exception of one time, which is weird, it's always been a struggle, with the quote unquote cravings. And I liked the way, even that little changing of how you view that, because you said, well, this craving, it's actually your body telling you it's the nicotine leaving. So it's like, hey, this is leaving, we should probably put some more in there. And, just shifting, kind of like what you said earlier, where you're, instead of being like, oh man, I'm so stressed, it's like, shit, there's some stress and we're going to get through it. It's a very different mindset than, oh man, the cravings, they're killing me. I got to go get some cigarettes to, fuck yeah, it's getting out of my body now, like a couple more days of this and like that'll be gone. It's a very different mentality, very different mindset. So I appreciate very much, and I wish I could. I want to have you on again because I feel like there's a lot in your story that maybe we didn't talk about, and I want to expand on. But again, for everyone listening, um, Jennifer Bjornson from Basic to Bold, radically shift your life. Um, yeah, thank you so much, and thank you again for being on. Any closing words or anything before we end this today's session?
Well, I thank you for having me on. I love talking about this, and I just want to congratulate and seriously celebrate just the fact that you have done such a great job. Like
Thank you.
I'm so honored to be a part of it, and I genuinely am so excited just every person that takes that step to take control and create the life that they want. But again, thank you. This has been so much fun. I love talking about this. So I have had a blast.
I'll get you on the calendar again, and we'll figure something
Yeah.
else to sit here and ramble about because this has been I think it's been fun, and there's a lot of valuable information I think a lot of people can get from this. So um, I'm gonna get us off here. So thanks everyone again for listening, and we will be talking to Jennifer again soon. Take
Sounds
care, everyone.
great.